Hi everyone. Today I wanted to look at how to create isometric autotiles. This isn't a normal use case. I happen to be working on a game jam game right now where the assets, they look super detailed and they look super good, but because it's isometric, the tiles themselves don't seem to have borders. And what ends up happening is it sort of looks a little bit extreme without any sort of borders. So what I've gone ahead and done is I figured out rather, how to implement isometric borders for isometric tiles, and I figured out a pretty good workflow, so I thought I'd talk about that today. This is going to be a little bit less edited than my normal ones. That's simply because I'm going to be refiguring it out as we go. I do have a sample project that makes it very clear how this works, but I just want to kind of figure it out as we go along so that I can, make sure that I understand how it's done myself. First thing I'm going to do is open Isometric. This is the one that I've already created, so I'm just going to skip that and go to a new one. Now I did 64 by 64 for my default here. You have to make it square for the approach that I'm taking. I'm going to be using Tilesetter. This is not a normal thing to do with Tilesetter. In fact, it's not really designed for isometric tiles, but because I figured out how to do it via that, we have all of the information we need when making our tiles to make this look really nice. So I'm actually going to do, instead of 64 by 64, I'm going to do 84 by 84. Or even, let's do 64 plus, yeah, let's do 96 here instead, by 96. This is a pretty large tile. I want it to look pretty nice though, so for the base tile, I'm going to make something that looks approximately like what I want it to. In the past, I've been doing stuff that looks like wood. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create a woody looking sort of color. And I'm going to take that same, that same color, and I'm going to put it in this one. And then I'm going to go ahead and pull, let's do it this way. I'm going to pull the value up just a little bit and the saturation down to make a lighter color. Let me just put something here that makes this easier. Then we come here. I see. Well, we can do the same way as we did before. Make it that way. Come to HSV, and we're going to do sort of the opposite. We're going to pull it this way a little bit, and we're going to pull it up and make a darker color. I don't have very specific ways of going about making this. There are plenty of tutorials online for how to do that, so I highly encourage it if you want to figure out better color theory than what I'm using. I am going to actually make this one just a little bit lighter here. Pull the saturation back even more. A little bit towards that. And okay. Now, what we're going to do, first thing I'm going to do is actually make a new layer. There's a very specific reason for that. It has to do with the borders. It's useful to have them on separate layers. But for this one, I'm just going to put the full picture that I want out here. And I'm going to do that by switching to just my normal brush. I'm going to go vertically and horizontally for symmetry. And I'm going to make myself something that looks pretty decent coming across here in terms of a count. So I'm going to do probably, let's see here, we've got 96. It's visible by 4, visible by 3. I think that's a little less work. I'm actually going to do 6. So it's rather a large slope, or I should say rather a small slope, but I don't feel too bad about it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. because we're going to use this later all over the place, and having it have a hard angle like this will make it look a little bit better once it comes time to actually create the borders. Okay, and so that's what it should look like when you do that. I'm going to take off horizontal, leave vertical, hit M to select this bit, and I can just drag it up 1 pixel. Now what I'm going to go ahead and do is copy this, paste it, and move it to the bottom. And what I'm going to do here, it's going to look a little bit weird, because you notice we have a square. We're not going to use the vast majority of the top of this tile until we get to the borders. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this down. Will be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, let's say, above it. And let's just verify that. We're at 4, 7, and if you include that one, then yes, we are correct. So in other words, you include the bottom pixel here. We'll hit B. Oh, by the way, I'll have a card here, hopefully, if I think about it. A link to the first part of this series. In that first part of this series, I go over how generally to make isometric tiles, and it's a pretty clean approach. I have had no problems with it. I've been doing it for quite some time now, and I think things look really good, so I'm very happy with it. If you want to take a look, feel free. It's probably good to go over it first, because at the moment this is going to be some pretty advanced stuff. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do here, well, I'm going to take off my horizontal symmetries. I'm just going to put in a line there. This is going to define the midpoint, sort of this entire thing. We're going to take this color, we're going to put it on top. That's going to be our, well, you know what? I don't even like it, actually. Let me change this color a little bit here, too. We're going to make it a little bit darker. We're even going to come even darker still. We're going to get something close to what we have for our other one. Yeah, I like having a nice, deep, rich, dark color for that. This one's going to be almost black. We're going to put that on the left side. Light's going to be coming from the right. This, and we're going to put this brighter one. I am going to actually change that to be a bit darker as well. We're going to put that there. That's a decent color, though. I'm going to leave it as is. Okay, next thing I'm going to do, and this is simply because I'm making planks in my game, like boards. So I want to make this look approximately like it has boards laying out across this. Just due to the direction of things, I'm going to make my lines come from here to here in this pattern all the way across here. And the simple way to do that is I'm just going to select these here. I think I'll need to select all the way across. I'm just going to select these black bits. So you hit W and hold down Shift. Can't do it for this last one. You got to hit M and hold down Shift. But then you simply go Control C, Control V, and you decide where you want your planks. I'm probably going to come up here, do it probably there. Yeah, I think that looks best, probably. Okay, so this part here looks a little bit weird, but I'm actually going to leave it. it should be all right at the perspective or at the zoom level that we're going to end up having, so I'm not so worried about it. But you can see how from, at 100%, things look like boards. They look pretty good going down there. I don't think for the time being I'm going to put the boards so they look like they have vertical depth here. That's because I don't exactly know what it's going to look like when we go up and build some walls, so I'm just going to leave it as is for now. This is our base sprite, and as a reminder, I'm going to be using Tilesetter here as a base for this. We made this 96, so the tiles are going to be pretty big there. And I like to have a lot of these built for the first step before I even go into Tilesetter, so I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to show you how to make some borders now for this stuff. The first thing you do is make a new thing here. We're going to delete that out. You can actually do Control B to make a new empty one, or Alt B, excuse me. I did Alt N, which copies it. We'll be using that a little bit here in the future. But now we have a bit of a shell that we can use. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this outer bit here. And use this as part of my template here for how to create these borders. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the bottom bit too. Okay, now we'll copy that, bring it over here, and notice I'm switching layers, putting them in the top layer, and there's a specific reason for that. And the reason is very simply that we're going to be using this to actually guide where we're coloring things in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just the top bit, and select this whole top bit here, and paste it. And I'm going to move it up. Now this is basically how tall you want your walls to be. You can think of it as sort of inverting your tile. However, I want my walls to be really tall. I think it looks better when you're in isometric view if you have extremely tall walls. I don't like having a lot of unused space, so maybe we'll just put it at the very top. We'll see how that ends up turning out. Okay, now we have a line. I'm going to use I'm going to grab black and I'm going to put it in right here. You can just click there and hold down shift and drop down to the perpendicular there. Now we have a good idea of what our wall on the left needs to look like and what our wall on the right needs to look like in terms of total area. I'm also going to put in a drop line here as well as over here. Okay, now you can kind of see what the outline generally looks like. The next thing I'm actually going to do is just erase this stuff for this particular tile. We don't need it. It's a little bit too much. And the reason is the border we're looking at here is just these sides. Now we sort of need to find a way to get all variants of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here. I'm going to select this color. Now notice this is the color that is away from the light source. That means if you're in this wall, the light's going to be on the other side. It'll hit this a little bit by coming over this side here. But this will be basically completely dark. You could go into some ambient occlusion and some theory like that. I'm not going to bother because this is just a tutorial. But that means this one will have a little bit of color in it. So we're going to make it the opposite of what our previous walls are for this very first one. And that's all we're going to do for now. We're just going to leave it as this sort of weird looking thing. And I'm going to hit Alt N. This time I intentionally leave it as a pure duplicate. And the reason for that is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this. Notice I have it 1 pixel to the right, so we maintain the black border. I'm just going to delete that. Then we're going to come back to this other one. I'm going to do Alt-N again, create another pure copy. And keeping the black border, we're going to delete the rest of what's here as well. Okay, now we have 2 of our bits. Well, I should say 3 of our borders that we need. Okay, that looks reasonably good, I think, but we need a lot more. And the reason is, in order to make this work in Tilesetter, a lot of the borders don't work because Tilesetter isn't built for isometric, as I mentioned. So we're going to have to keep creating. Now, the next sort of generic border that we need, we have this weird thing that if we think about, if isometric is rotating your tiles X amount, then this looks like it's sort of the top left corner rotated 45 degrees this way to the right. This one looks like it will be probably the equivalent to the top if you're in Tilesetter, because it's rotated 45 degrees approximately. I don't think that's exact, but 45 degrees to the right. And then this one looks like it's rotated also 45 degrees to the right if it's starting on the left. This is top, this is left, and this is upper left. If you take all those and rotate them 90 degrees, you get the right values. Now what I'm going to do, this is a little bit of a harder concept to understand here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come down and I'm going to take my outline again just by selecting it. And notice I'm on the first layer so that I can actually select the right one. And I select these over here on this side first. And then I'm going to switch to my M so that I can just select this bottom individually. I'm also going to go ahead and take this bit so that we can get a little bit of extra detail. And then I'm actually going to take this exact tile, I'm going to new it again, so we have the exact same thing, and I'm going to paste it into the first layer. And there's a reason for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to erase this bottom part here. Oops, that's in this layer. And you'll see why in a moment I do this. And it also has it here. We don't want that. Okay, and now I'm going to take black. I'm going to put in my perpendicular again. Now you'll notice this is the part of the wall that is sort of at the bottom. And what that means is the top bit would have dropped down and become the same shape as this bottom part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this. I'm going to deselect this by right-clicking and dragging. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to come up to this layer, paste it, and move it up. And I'm going to move this to be in line perfectly with what we had before. So now this looks again like the top of our tile from before. Then down here, I'm actually going to go ahead and paste this again. And in fact, I'm going to redraw this black line here because I don't know if it shows up on the bottom so well. We're going to end up doing that. So I like to make sure that I have all my black lines in. Okay, now we're still on the top, so what we're going to do is we're going to delete this. In fact, what I'll do is put my clear color I did the wrong button. G. That's what you got to hit. I'm going to clear that out. Now I'm going to hit select. I'm going to pick up this whole thing and delete it, as well as this thing. Okay, now we have part of what we need. We need to finish coloring it in. Okay, now, what's wrong with this? Well, if we think again that the light is coming from the right, then our original tile, if we look here and turn on that, it had this color being the light one. So we need to do that again. We straight up just need to take this color, put it here, and put it on the right layer, and then take our darker color and put it here. Now that matches that, notice. Okay, now we need to go ahead and do the exact same thing that we did with this tile. We need to make the individual tiles that support it. So we're going to do this, the individual borders, excuse me. We're going to copy this, delete it. I'm going to delete this from our bottom one because they're not supposed to be there. In fact, I'm just going to delete the bottom altogether. This one as well. That way we don't run into that issue again. We're going to new this again. Alt-N. We're going to select one to the right. We misclicked there. One to the left, excuse me. And then now we have a pretty good start here. We've got about, let's see, we have 6 borders and 1 base tile. So let's go see what we need to build, because there may be more that we end up needing. So we're going to actually just import this. We're going to put this into Tilesetter. First thing you do is select it, hit escape, make sure you select the correct layer, hit escape, Control A, Control C. That'll give you the data correctly. That is a problem. That seems weird, but trust me when I say that's the right pattern. So now we have this weird, looks like a very squat looking tile. We're going to go ahead and say build borders blob. And the first thing that we're actually going to do here is we're going to turn off all of these cutoffs. We don't want this thing to be cut off. We're sort of defining flat walls, and we don't need it to change cutoffs for us at all anywhere, because they're going to be flat with the actual tile. All right, so that looks good. That was the first step. The next step we're going to do is we're going to just move to our next tile. You click the cell, hit escape, Control A, Control C again, come back to Tilesetter, paste it. Now, what did we say this was? We said this was actually the top left. So we delete that, we come here, remove composite, and then put it in there. Now it looks weird because it looks like we're looking up, which means I would expect it to be in this one, but that's not the case. And we can do all of our reasoning from here very easily, as long as we have this one tile built. This tile is going to be the one that's to the right of that. Well, the ones that's to the right of that will extend the wall going down and to the right, which means we need the one that is the dark brown going down and to the right towards the top. Let's go ahead and find that one. These are all bottoms. That's a bottom. Here we go. This is the dark one that's towards the top. We hit escape. I didn't do it there. You saw it select the frame in that case, which was a bit weird, but it happens sometimes. Paste it, remove it, come back, go to our image, hit that. We have that now. Now this one looks a little dumb because it's trying to use a composite. We got to remove the composite. If that one is the top wall going down and to the right, we need now the one that is down and right and down and left. That'll give us what this looks like, which means it needs to be dark on top and light on bottom. Now if we look, we never actually made one of those. We don't have any tiles representing both the top and the bottom at once. So we're going to have to redo that. So what I like to do is I like to take the one that is for the top bit of it. We know the top bit has to be dark, and I make a new one based on that. Now we have one that needs to be the bottom, showing the light going down and to the left. We already have one of those, so let's go ahead and take this, come over here, this is our new tile, and just paste it. Now we have that exact one that we need for that. So we hit escape, Control C, Control V. I'm sorry, Control C is all we need to hit. We don't need to paste it. Now we come here, paste it in, delete that. This one. You always set it to the last one in there. And it looks a little silly from this angle, but it looks completely correct. Notice you're not going to see any of this tile because I have it so short. If you want to make it so it's visible, you'll want to reduce the height of your wall or bring up the height of this tile. In this case, I don't want to be able to see it, so I'm not going to do anything with it. Okay, now we have what is equivalent to, normally, the bottom right square. So we need something to represent the bottom. Well, the bottom is going to be this one. We can take and just extrapolate this lighter color down and to the left. So this one is just the one that we already had. In fact, we just pasted that over here. So it's this one. So that's going to be this guy. Now it looks a little silly, so we're going to actually change the rotation. Let's see here, what do we want? Go back to normal rotation, I guess, this one, since we're defining the rotation here. This one now did the same thing because it's a composite, so we need to get rid of the composite. And notice, if it's continuing from here, we need this one plus the wall going up and to the left. That one we have already. Somewhere. Here we go. Now we come back here, we get rid of it. Go to this tile. Instead of composite, we put that in there. Now, yes, it completely covers it up. That's all right. Now we need the bottom brown one. We should have that created already. Yep, here it is. We need to come back and set the rotation to our own rotation. We don't want any special rotation on these. We're going to remove composite. Now notice this is the same thing as this one up above. Up and to the right, just flip to the left, right? Actually, no. The important bit to notice about this one is this tile has an even number of pixels horizontally and hence vertically, because it has to be a square in order to use it in Tilesetter. But because it has an even number of tiles, that midline, the one coming down here, is one tile to the right. Is one pixel to the right of what would be an actual mirror image. And so because of that, if we just take that thing and flip it using flip X, it will actually look completely wrong. Not to mention, it will have the light color instead of the dark color facing this direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to take and do exactly what we did before. We're going to come in here. We're going to take the one that's least visible, which is the one that is behind this one. This one goes behind everything else. We're going to make a new version of it. We're going to take our wall here, copy it, and paste it. And we're going to delete this, and hopefully that doesn't interfere with our other wall. No, it shouldn't, because it's got the same thing there. And now we're going to take this and we're going to go put that in. Okay, we're getting close to something that's going to look pretty reasonable, so I'm going to show it off when we're done with this. Okay, now finally for the left. This one, we can see it's just this tile, the one that looks like it's extending down on the left with a bright value on top. So this one. Okay, and we need to put the rotation correctly. All right, there we go. Now something here looks really weird. I'm going to actually go ahead and import this and show you what it looks like in Godot. It actually won't look terrible if I just use it as is. So I'm going to go export. Now I've got a place where I'm testing this stuff already. Let's see if I can find it. I think I have it in my add-ons folder in Dungeon Generator. Yes. So I'm just going to call this ISO Auto. In fact, I'm just going to name it the whole thing because I am not lazy. Now this is not going to look perfect. This is all part of the learning process, so I'm hoping to show you. So what I'm going to do here is the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take this, and you know what? I'm actually going to make a new scene. I'm going to do the same exact type of scene. We're going to instance the generator. We're going to also instance, don't we have player here? What is this? Demo player. Did not learn to read. Okay. Now this is going to be a bit weird because the generator that I have built, this is based off of KidsCan code on his thing. It also requires square cell sizes. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the square cell size here. I don't know if that's correct, and I'm not even going to test it at the moment, to be perfectly honest. I'm going to increase these so they're a little bit bigger. Remove is debug because that's my own thing that simply we don't need. I'm going to clear this tile set. I'm going to add a new one. Oh, actually, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the cell size. This is something that we had to calculate before. Let's come back. And all we need to do here is hit M, and we need to select the right portion of this, which is this portion. If you go back to my previous video, as mentioned, you'll see that this is the right value. This is literally the exact value you need in order to have this right. So this is, if you look down here, 90 by 14. Pretty extreme, but should be right. So let's come back to Godot. Okay, and now for our tile set, now we can go in here. We will import Isometric Autotile into it. We're going to hit New Autotile, and the reason is the snap options have to be set. This is going to be 96 by 96 though, so we get our default thing here. We're going to hit the trash button immediately so that we can redefine our Autotile correctly, and we'll just select the whole thing. Now, defining the bitmask for this, I feel like, is an exercise in futility. It looks like you might be able to figure it out, but you actually can't. Or at least, it's really difficult to. So what I'm actually going to do to define this, for one, I'm going to save this. I'm going to call it ISO. And the first thing that I'm going to do is very simply come back here, select my tile, select the bitmask property, and hit copy bitmask. I already have this defined. This is something that you should have everywhere. You don't have to have the dungeon generator, but you should have a 3x3 minimal bitmask somewhere in a project. I use reference projects. You can put it into things like a GitHub repo with all your default add-ons. That's what I do. I'll provide a link to that here momentarily. But in either case, you really need to have that defined somewhere, because if you're using Tilesetter, that will definitely be useful whenever you're using it. Okay, so we have the bitmask in memory. We can just paste it in. Now, why didn't it work? Well, the reason it didn't work is this one is quite a bit bigger than the other one. In terms of the actual cell sizes. So we need to make it look like that. Alright, so this is going to be extremely difficult for most people to understand. but I'm going to try to explain it in a way that makes sense. We need to make this look like the same type of bitmask as a normal tile set would be built in Tilesetter. That will give Godot the correct information needed to actually build out what looks like a correct isometric auto-tiled tile map. So I'm going to make the first set of instructions here. And I'm going to be constantly referring back to a thing that is a reference for me, because this is extremely painful otherwise. So if we come over to this demo, look at this tile set, come in here, do this so it looks a bit nicer. If you're wondering why I can't copy paste, the reason is actually that the tile size, being so vastly different, changes how these things get laid out as far as the red goes. So you can see I've already got these defined, but if I go back to the other one, I need all of these as well. So we'll go one around the middle, and then we draw in some lines. I know I sound like I'm being imprecise. The reason is I'm not used to drawing these out anymore. I usually have some default stuff, but you can tell right here I'm just going through the middle. Okay, now we need to define these lines. Oh, that's not good. Yeah, something's off here. Let's see here. This is going to take a little bit of time. The top one is 1, 1, 2, 2 in the middle. Okay. There should be 4 across. Okay, that's the one I missed. Now we're going to do the exact same thing again. Notice we've got the one that represents that, so we come do the outer. And that should be that one. We have all those tiles. Okay, good. Now for these, we'll come back and look again at this. They look sort of, I consider them to be Tetris pieces, also plugs. There's a down plug, a wide down plug, wide up, up. Okay, so let's go back and define those. Okay, this one is a normal plug. Okay, it starts one below. That's important to remember because I didn't do that. Now there's a thick plug. This is a thick plug up. Oops. And this is the thin plug up. This, if we remember, is the four-way. Those are the reverse plugs. We know because if you follow the lines of 2 across, you get those. You follow the lines of 1 across, you get those. Okay, this one we have to double check because this thing does not look normal. Okay, so the top left is taken up first. And I call these just corners. Not very creative, but it helps to think about them. Now these guys I call fishies, and they all point towards the center of this tile. Or center of these tiles, I should say. So let's do that. Alright, now let's just double check and make sure we're not missing anything. We've got corners, we've got 8 plugs, we've got a 4-way, we've got fishes, we've got all corners defined here, we've got vertical, horizontal, single tile, and those. We're going to go ahead and define this as our icon, which is sort of normal. And we've got all those. Okay, so it actually looks like it's pretty close to done. So now we're going to take it and we're going to draw. Now you can see, if I zoom in a little bit here, where I define these as straight bits here. Sometimes it's easiest just to switch to bucket. You can see when it highlights, that's when you click. Now you can see, if you have this as completely rectangular, if this is a rectangular solid, then actually it looks pretty good. It actually is pretty much done. You can see there's a little bit of a weird thing in there that I must have left in by accident, so we can skip it for now. I'm just going to show you how to fix up the rest of this so that this tile set actually looks good when you need to make it non-rectangular. So if you look and I right click, notice I've gone back to the pen mode and I come and I carve in. These look a little stupid. You can see like there's a weird double wall there. That doesn't look right. If I delete another one, it looks angled here, which looks weird. It's a little bit better in the center now, but it's still not good. And if I come and delete that one, we're getting some weird artifacts again. In general, this approach doesn't look great for these pieces. So what I'm going to do, the first thing I'm going to do for this is actually in here. One thing that you have to do when you're defining perspective-based tile sets is redefine your inner corners as well. So how we changed what our actual corners look like, we need to do that for the inner corners as well. The inner corners correspond to very specific tiles. So I'm going to come actually into my tile set and show you how I figure out what tiles those are. Now it's these 4 tiles. It's always the thicker ones here. Now, normally, I would suggest going ahead and defining your tiles and making them look nice and pretty, your borders and making them look nice and pretty, especially if you're doing a perspective-based tile set. But actually, in this one, at least as far as I can tell, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is take those 4 tiles. And if we look here, they look like they're sort of the most broken ones. I think if we compare them more or less side by side, zoom in here, it looks like it's making a cross in the middle of these here, sort of. Yeah, that's making sort of a cross. So if we take these 4, remove composite, one thing you have to do that's a little bit silly is do Alt-B so I get an empty one. I'm going to make a very dark color somewhere on this border, literally anywhere, and just 1 dot. Now the reason for that is sort of silly. It doesn't allow you to say, don't put a border here. And because you can't say, don't put a border at all, it will keep the dotted lines in there. And I'm going to go ahead and remove composite on all these so that we know where we need to build. And I'm just going to paste my single dot here and delete it. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to make that the composite view for literally all of them. Okay, now we have a much thinner tile set here, but certain things look a little silly. we're going to try and see what this looks like now. So it's a lot of, trial and error, but it'll look pretty good, I promise you, when we're done. So we have isometric autotile, go into that. Yes, we want to replace it. Come back into Godot. And actually take a look at that. Looks pretty good. Actually, okay, after a few more trials and errors, I did find a couple places where the tile set doesn't look good. So I'm going to keep going a little bit, and we're going to figure out how to make these work better. You can see it's sort of, when you have things going at a bit of odd angles, not so much that up one, maybe a little odd here because there's a missing line. You'll notice I've turned on Y sort. That does make it look a lot better. This side generally looks a lot better than the other one. But there's a bad one. So I'm just going to show you now very quickly how to actually update the tile set manually by hand in order to make these things look much better. So if we come to Isometric, you can see I've already got the whole tile set open here, and you can actually see where the problems are. It's on any of these square tiles. Anything that has been sheared off like that, that's not correct. So all we're going to do ultimately for each of these is take what should be the tile like this. So this part of the tile here, you can even see that it comes down perfectly like that. We're going to paste it, and we're going to bring it over top of all these little bits. Right like that. And what this is going to do for us is give us the ability to build out those other parts of our tile set correctly. There should be some that have the issue with, yes, here we are. Yeah, I think what we need now is the bottom part of this wall. So it's the easiest way to do this. Just select from here, up. And it's alright if you select a little bit too much. Doesn't really affect anything. As long as it looks right. Don't forget that. Okay. Now that we have the bottom on there, we will paste it over here. Those look better. I was expecting there to be some issues with the light ones, but let's take a look and see what this looks like. Okay, well, this is significantly cleaned up down here. You can see that pretty much looks right. It looks a little bit funny, but it looks right. In general, you'll notice issues when you get into some weird configurations. That's why you don't see me being very precise. Things are looking better. Yep. Okay, so I think that's about it. And that should be about it for this video. There's not really much else left of this. Obviously, you'll want to make your tile sets probably a little less extreme. The walls on this are very, very high. But otherwise, I think that about does it for this one. If you have any questions, leave comments, whatever you need to do, I can try to help. Feel free to come join my Patreon page where you get more stuff like this and support for the Firebase plugin that I'm responsible for, the REST-based plugin. And yeah, that is about all there is. So thank you very much and have a good day.